The morning sun cast long shadows across the rocky mountainside as Taiho Kim adjusted his backpack. The tall, lean geologist checked his GPS one more time before sliding it into his pocket. He was 3 days into his solo research trip, collecting rock samples from this remote mountain range. Just 2 more samples and I can head back to camp, he said to himself, his breath visible in the cool air. Taiho loved the quiet of these mountains. Here, far from the noise of the city, he could think clearly. He carefully chipped at an interesting rock formation, placing the fragments into labeled containers. The sky was clear blue, perfect weather for field work. But as Taiho looked up to stretch his back, he noticed something unusual. A bright light cut across the sky, leaving a trail of smoke behind it. This was no ordinary shooting star or airplane. What the? Taiho shielded his eyes as the object grew larger, moving much too fast. Whatever it was coming down, and coming down close. The object crashed into the mountainside about 2 kilometers away with a thunderous boom that echoed through the valleys. The ground beneath Taiho's feet trembled. Birds scattered from trees, filling the air with panicked cries. Most people would have run away. Taiho ran toward it. He grabbed his emergency kit and began moving quickly across the rough terrain. Dark clouds gathered overhead as he climbed over rocks and pushed through dense underbrush. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of burned metal, and something strange. Something definitely not from Earth. "This is crazy," Taiho muttered as he climbed higher. Rain began to fall, first as light drops, then in heavy sheets that soaked through his jacket. But he kept going. Someone might need help. After an hour of difficult hiking, Taiho reached a ridge overlooking a small valley. What he saw below made him freeze in his tracks. It wasn't a meteor, it was a spacecraft, sleek and silvery, about the size of a small bus. One side was crushed from impact, and the other was partially buried in the mountainside. Strange blue, lights flickered around what appeared to be the front section. Taiho's heart raced. "This can't be real," he whispered. But he knew what he was seeing. This wasn't human technology. He carefully made his way down to the crash site. As he got closer, he could feel heat radiating from the wreckage. A soft, pulsing hum came from inside, growing increasingly irregular. Taiho approached a gap in the torn metal. The interior glowed with dim blue light. He peered inside and saw what looked like a cockpit filled with strange symbols and flickering screens. Then he saw her. She was trapped under a section of collapsed metal panels. She looked almost human, but not quite. Her skin had a faint blue sheen, and her features were more delicate than any human's. Most striking were her eyes, large, silver-colored with no visible pupils. They widened when she saw Taiho. The being made a series of clicking and whistling sounds. Though Taiho couldn't understand the words, the panic in her voice was clear. "It's okay," Taiho said, holding up his hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm here to help." The creature pointed urgently to a pulsing cylinder at the back of the craft. Even Taiho could tell it was damaged. Cracks spread across its surface and blue energy sparked from it erratically. "That doesn't look good," Taiho said. He didn't need to understand alien technology to recognize a failing power core when he saw one. The being made more urgent sounds, then pointed to herself, then outside. The message was clear. She needed to get out, and fast. Taiho hesitated only for a second before climbing into the craft. The interior was hot, almost unbearably so, and the air tasted metallic. Warning lights flashed on panels around him. As he approached, the alien's eyes grew even wider. She made a series of rapid gestures toward something on her wrist, then pointed at Taiho's exposed skin. "I don't understand," Taiho said, "but we need to get you out of here." He examined the metal trapping her. It was heavy, but he might be able to lift it enough for her to slide out. The power core behind them sparked violently, and the humming grew louder. They were running out of time. Taiho positioned himself and gripped the edge of the metal panel. It was hot enough to burn his hands, but he ignored the pain. "On 3, he said, knowing she wouldn't understand his words, but hoping his intent was clear. 1, 2, 3. He lifted with all his strength. The metal was heavier than he expected, and the edges cut into his palms. Sweat poured down his face as his muscles strained. Slowly, the panel rose a few centimeters. The alien hesitated, looking at Taiho with what seemed like disbelief. Then, she quickly pulled herself free, revealing a slim body with 4 slender limbs. Her right leg was clearly injured, with a greenish fluid seeping through her strange silver clothing. The moment she was clear, Taiho dropped the panel. He looked at his hands. They were red and blistered from the hot metal. It hurt. But there was no time to worry about that now. The power core gave a high-pitched whine. The alien made an alarmed sound and grabbed Taiho's arm, pulling him toward the exit. Time to go, Taiho agreed, understanding the universal language of imminent explosion. The alien tried to stand but collapsed when she put weight on her injured leg. Without hesitation, Taiho scooped her up. She was surprisingly light, maybe half the weight of a human her size. He carried her out of the craft just as the whining from the power core reached a deafening pitch. They were only 30 meters away when the alien suddenly stiffened in his arms. She twisted around to look, back at the ship, then began struggling frantically. "What's wrong?" Taiho asked. She pointed to her wrist device, then back at the ship, making desperate sounds. "We can't go back," Taiho said firmly. "It's going to blow." The alien's silver eyes locked with his. Then she reached up with a slender hand and touched his face in what seemed like a gesture of resignation or thanks. They had barely gone another 20 meters when the spacecraft exploded. The force knocked Taiho forward. Acting on instinct, he twisted his body to take the fall, keeping the alien safely above him. Heat washed over them as debris rained down. Taiho covered the alien with his body, feeling sharp fragments hit his back. One piece sliced through his jacket and into his shoulder, but he remained still, protecting the stranger in his arms. When the initial blast subsided, Taiho looked up. Where the spacecraft had been, there was now only a smoking crater. Rain hissed as it hit the superheated metal fragments scattered across the mountainside. The alien stared at the destruction, then at Taiho. She made a soft, trilling sound as she touched his bleeding shoulder, her expression one of confusion and concern. Taiho winced as he sat up. "It's just a cut, I'll be fine." He checked the alien for injuries. Besides her leg, she seemed unhurt from their escape. She watched him with those strange silver eyes, studying his every move. Thunder rumbled overhead. The rain was getting heavier, and night would fall soon. They needed shelter. "My camp is about 3 kilometers that way," Taiho said, pointing. "Can you walk?" The alien tried to stand again but couldn't. She looked up at Taiho and made a helpless gesture. "That's what I thought." Taiho smiled reassuringly. "Don't worry, I'll carry you." He helped her onto his back, ignoring the pain in his shoulder and burned hands. The alien made what sounded like protests, but Taiho had already started walking. As they made their slow journey through the storm, Taiho felt the alien's grip tighten whenever he winced or stumbled. She seemed bewildered by his endurance. What Taiho couldn't know, was that in that moment, he had changed humanity's place in the galaxy forever. To the alien watching him push through pain that would have incapacitated her own, kind humans had just become the most fascinating species in the universe. Night had fallen by the time Taiho reached his camp with the alien still clinging to his back. Rain poured down around them as he pushed open the door to his small research cabin. "Home, sweet home," Taiho said, gently helping the alien onto a chair. He turned on the solar-powered lights, revealing a simple one-room cabin with basic supplies. The alien looked around with wide silver eyes, taking in every detail. She made a soft, chirping sound that somehow seemed like a question. "Let's get you dry first," Taiho said, grabbing a clean towel. He handed it to her, showing how to use it by drying his own face. The alien copied him, carefully patting her bluish skin dry. Her movements were graceful but cautious, as if she feared breaking something. Taiho winced as he removed his wet jacket. His shoulder was still bleeding, and his burned hands throbbed with pain. He tried not to show his discomfort as he gathered his first aid kit. The alien watched him closely. She made a series of clicking sounds and pointed to his injuries, then, to herself, clearly feeling responsible. "It's okay," Taiho said with a smile. "I've had worse from rock climbing." He cleaned and bandaged his shoulder, his face showing little reaction despite the sting of antiseptic. The alien seemed fascinated by this process. When Taiho began treating his burned hands, she leaned forward, silver eyes wide with what looked like concern mixed with disbelief. After tending to himself, Taiho turned his attention to the alien's injured leg. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to the wound. The alien hesitated, then slowly extended her leg. The cut wasn't deep, but the greenish fluid, obviously her blood, was still seeping out. Taiho cleaned the wound as gently as possible. The alien flinched at first but remained still. He noticed her breathing quicken and her hands gripped the chair tightly. Clearly, her species felt pain intensely. "Almost done," Taiho said soothingly, wrapping a bandage around her slim leg. When he finished, the alien touched the bandage carefully. She looked at Taiho, then made a gesture that seemed like thanks. "You're welcome," Taiho replied. "I'm Taiho, by the way." He pointed to himself. "Taiho." The alien watched his lips move, then pointed to herself and made a musical sound that was short but complex. "I'm sorry, I can't really pronounce that," Taiho admitted with a small laugh. The alien seemed to understand his difficulty. After thinking for a moment, she simplified the sound to something like Nara. "Nara," Taiho repeated, smiling. "Nice to meet you, Nara." Nara nodded, pleased with this small step in communication. The rain continued to pound on the roof as Taiho prepared a simple meal. He wasn't sure what Nara could eat, so he offered her water first. She sniffed it cautiously before taking a sip. While Taiho ate his dinner, Nara reached for a small device on her wrist. It had been damaged in the crash, but some parts still glowed with dim blue light. She pressed several buttons, causing it to project a small hologram of symbols in the air. "Wow," Taiho said, nearly dropping his fork. "That's amazing technology." Nara worked with the device for several minutes before a small robotic voice emerged from it. The voice spoke in a language Taiho didn't recognize, then switched to heavily accented but understandable English. Translation matrix. Damaged. Basic function. Possible. Taiho's eyes widened. "You have a translator? That's incredible." Nara spoke to the device in her clicking musical language. The device processed for a moment. "I am Nara. From Luridia. Thank you. Save me." "You're welcome," Taiho replied, speaking slowly. "I'm glad I could help." They spent the next hour communicating through the damaged translator. The conversation was broken and simple, but Taiho learned that Nara was a scientist studying Earth's atmosphere. Her small ship had malfunctioned, causing the crash. "How badly are you hurt?" Taiho asked, pointing to her leg. The translator conveyed Nara's response. "Pain. Severe. For my kind. Small injury. Very painful." "I'm sorry to hear that," Taiho said. "Is there anything else I can do to help?" Nara spoke again, and the translator worked hard to convert her words. "You confuse me. You carry me many kilometers. Your hands burned, shoulder bleeding. How you function?" Taiho shrugged. "It hurts, but not enough to stop me from doing what needs to be done." The translator relayed his words. Nara's silver eyes widened and she made a sound that seemed like disbelief. "Human pain tolerance and impossible for Luridian," the translator said. "My people feel pain 10 times stronger than humans." "That explains a lot," Taiho said. "No wonder you were surprised when I carried you." As they continued talking, Taiho learned more about Nara's people. The Luridians had evolved with extremely sensitive nervous systems, making them quick to avoid danger but also vulnerable to pain. Even minor injuries could be debilitating for them. "Your species. Fascinating," the translator conveyed. "Never seen such endurance." Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Taiho froze. He wasn't expecting anyone. "Hide," he whispered urgently to Nara, pointing to the small bedroom area. Nara hobbled quickly behind the partition as Taiho opened the door. Standing in the rain was his friend Jisoo Park, a linguistic anthropologist who often worked in the same mountain range. Taiho! Thank goodness you're okay, Jisoo said, stepping inside and removing her wet rain jacket. Did you see that explosion? Earlier? Everyone at the research station is talking about it. They think it was a meteor. Jisoo stopped talking when she noticed the blood-stained bandage on Taiho's shoulder and his bandaged hands. What happened to you? She asked, concerned. Taiho hesitated. Jisoo was his closest friend, but could he trust her with something this big? Before he could decide, Nara stumbled and knocked over a lamp behind the partition. The crash made Jisoo jump. Who's there? She called out, her voice sharp with suspicion. Taiho sighed. Jisoo, I need you to promise me you won't freak out. What are you talking about? Jisoo demanded. I found someone, or something, at the crash site. Taiho explained. She's injured and scared. I need your help. Jisoo's eyes narrowed. Taiho, what did you do? Instead of answering, Taiho called out. Nara, it's okay. You can come out. She's a friend. Slowly, Nara emerged from behind the partition. Jisoo gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. For a long moment, she stood frozen, staring at the clearly non-human visitor. This is impossible, Jisoo whispered finally. This is Nara, Taiho said simply. She's from a planet called Laridia. Her ship crashed, and I helped her escape before it exploded. Jisoo looked from Nara to Taiho and back again. Her shock gradually gave way to the curiosity that made her such a good anthropologist. She has a translator, Taiho added. It's damaged, but it works somewhat. Jisoo's eyes lit up at this information. A translator? That's amazing. She approached Nara slowly, her hands open to show she meant no harm. Hello, Nara, I'm Jisoo. Nara spoke into her wrist device, and the robotic voice translated, Hello, Jisoo, please. Not tell others. About me. Your secret is safe with me, Jisoo replied, her scientific curiosity clearly battling with her disbelief. While Jisoo and Nara began their awkward but enthusiastic attempts at communication, Taiho checked his phone. There were several messages from the research station about the meteor impact. Government teams were already on their way to investigate. We have a problem, Taiho said, showing the messages to Jisoo. They'll be searching this whole area by morning. Jisoo frowned. What are we going to do? We can't let them find her. Nara seemed to understand the concern. She spoke into her translator again. Need contact. My ship, in orbit, around Earth. Taiho and Jisoo exchanged surprised looks. There's a whole ship of your people up there? Jisoo asked. Nara nodded. Research mission. Peaceful. Need reach. High point. Send signal. Taiho looked out the window at the still pouring rain and the dark mountains beyond. They would have to move quickly before the government teams arrived. And they would need to reach one of the highest peaks to have any chance of sending a signal to orbit. We'll help you, Taiho decided, meeting Nara's silver eyes with determination. But we need to leave at first light. As Nara expressed her gratitude through the translator, Taiho couldn't help wondering what he had gotten himself into. He had only wanted to collect rock samples, and now he was helping an alien contact her spaceship while avoiding government agents. One thing was certain: life would never be the same again. Dawn broke with clear skies after the night's heavy rain. Taiho, Jisoo, and Nara prepared to leave the cabin. Time was running out. The highest peak is Mount Seoro, Taiho said, pointing to a map. It's about 7 kilometers from here. We need to reach it before the government teams find us. Jisoo packed food and water while Taiho gathered emergency supplies. Nara worked on her wrist device, trying to improve its function. Signal strength. Better on mountain, Nara's translator said. Can call in my ship. Jisoo had spent half the night talking with Nara, learning basic words in the Laridian language. Now she was helping Nara adjust the translator. Your technology is amazing, Jisoo said, watching Nara reprogram the device. Your friend. More amazing, the translator replied as Nara looked at Taiho. Still working, with such injuries. Taiho's burns and shoulder wounds still hurt, but he ignored the pain. There were more important things to worry about. We should go, he said, checking his watch. The search teams will start at the crash site and work their way out. Nara could walk better now, but she was still slow. Taiho had made her a walking stick, which helped. The three set out into the forest, moving as quickly as Nara could manage. They had gone about 2 kilometers when they heard the distant sound of helicopters. They're here, Jisoo whispered, looking up through the trees. We need to move faster, Taiho said. He turned to Nara. I'm sorry, but can I carry you again? Nara hesitated, then nodded. The translator spoke. Feel bad. Slow you down. Don't worry about it, Taiho said as he lifted her onto his back. Despite his injuries, he moved with steady determination. Jisoo led the way, finding the easiest path through the dense forest. They needed to stay under the tree cover to avoid being seen from above. By midday, they had reached the base of Mount Seoro. The helicopters were getting closer, moving in a search pattern across the mountains. We need to rest for a minute, Jisoo said, noticing Taiho's face was pale with exhaustion. Taiho carefully set Nara down and sat heavily on a rock. He was tired, but they couldn't stop for long. Nara studied him with concern. She spoke into her translator. You in pain. Need rest longer. I'm fine, Taiho insisted, though sweat ran down his face despite the cool air. We need to keep moving, Nara touched his bandaged shoulder lightly. The translator spoke. For Liridian, such pain would stop all function. How you continue? Taiho smiled. Humans are stubborn, I guess. They ate a quick meal before continuing up the mountain. The path grew steeper and rockier. Taiho carried Nara when the terrain was difficult, and she walked with her stick when possible. As they climbed higher, they could see more of the surrounding mountains. Jisoo pointed to a distant column of smoke. That's where the ship crashed, she said. Look at all the vehicles. Several black SUVs and military trucks surrounded the crash site. Men in uniform and hazmat suits searched the area. Government, very interested. The translator conveyed Nara's words. Too interested, Taiho agreed. We need to be careful. They were halfway up the mountain when disaster struck. As they crossed an open area between trees, a helicopter flew directly overhead. The pilot looked down and spotted them. Run! Taiho shouted, lifting Nara and sprinting for the cover of trees on the other side. They barely made it to the tree line when the helicopter circled back. A voice boomed from a loudspeaker. This is Agent Do-Han Choi of the National Intelligence Service. Stop immediately. You are in a restricted area. They think we're just hikers, Jisoo whispered hopefully. Maybe they don't know about Nara. But her hope was short-lived. Agent Choi's voice continued. We know you have contact with the non-terrestrial entity. Surrender now for your own safety. Taiho's heart sank. They know. We have to keep moving. They pushed deeper into the forest, climbing higher up the mountain. The helicopter couldn't follow through the dense trees, but they could hear vehicles starting to move up the mountain roads. How much farther to the top? Jisoo asked, breathing hard. About 2 kilometers, Taiho replied. But it gets steeper. Nara's translator spoke. Need high point. Open space. For signal. They continued climbing, moving as fast as they could. The sounds of pursuit grew louder behind them. Agents were now following on foot, calling out orders to stop. They neared a rocky outcrop. A shot rang out. A bullet hit a tree just centimeters from Taiho's head. Get down, he shouted, pulling Nara and Jisoo behind a large boulder. More shots followed, hitting rocks around them. They were pinned down. They're shooting at us, Jisoo said in disbelief. Why would they shoot? They want Nara, Taiho said grimly. And they don't care how they get her. Nara's silver eyes were wide with fear. The translator conveyed her words. My fault. Put you in danger. It's not your fault, Taiho assured her. But we need a plan. He peered around the boulder, The agents were moving up the slope using trees for cover. There were at least 6 of them. I have an idea, Taiho said. Jisoo, you take Nara and continue up the mountain. Follow that ridge, it has more cover. I'll create a distraction. That's too dangerous, Jisoo protested. It's our only chance, Taiho insisted. Get Nara to the top. She needs to contact her ship. Before Jisoo could argue further, Taiho picked up several rocks. When I say go, run for that ridge. Don't stop until you reach the top. Jisoo reluctantly nodded. Nara touched Taiho's arm, her expression worried. The translator spoke. Be careful. Please. I will, Taiho promised. Ready? Go. Taiho threw the rocks in the opposite direction, then ran out from behind the boulder, deliberately making himself visible to the agents. As he'd hoped, they focused their attention on him. Over here, he shouted, drawing their fire as he zigzagged between trees. Jisoo and Nara ran for the ridge, quickly disappearing into the dense forest. Taiho continued his distraction, leading the agents away from his friends. He was doing well until his foot slipped on wet leaves. He fell hard, tumbling down a short slope. Pain shot through his already injured shoulder as he hit the ground. Before he could get up, 2 agents were on him. One pinned him down, while the other handcuffed him. Where is the alien? Agent Choi demanded, standing over Taiho. I don't know what you're talking about, Taiho replied, despite the agent's knee pressing painfully into his back. Agent Choi crouched down, his face cold. We have the crash site. We have video from a weather satellite. We know you took something or someone from that ship. Where is it? Taiho remained silent. The agent sighed and nodded to his men. They roughly pulled Taiho to his feet. Take him to the base, Agent Choi ordered. He'll talk eventually. As they dragged him down the mountain, Taiho could only hope that Jisoo and Nara had made it to the top. His sacrifice would be worth it if Nara could contact her people. What he didn't know was that his capture was about to change everything. Hours later, Taiho sat in a cold metal chair in a windowless room. His hands were cuffed to the table and his wounds had been roughly bandaged. Agent Choi had questioned him for hours, but Taiho had revealed nothing. The door opened, and a new person entered, a woman in a white lab coat. Mr. Kim, she said, sitting across from him. I'm Dr. Yuna. I'm here to treat your injuries. I'm fine, Taiho said flatly. Dr. Yuna raised an eyebrow as she examined his chart. Burns on both hands, a deep laceration on your shoulder, and various other injuries. Yet you carried an alien for kilometers and ran up a mountain. Most people would be in too much pain to move. I did what needed to be done, Taiho said simply. Dr. Yuna studied him with interest. That's what fascinates me. And it seems to have fascinated your alien friend too. Taiho's head snapped up. What do you mean? Dr. Yuna smiled. Oh, we caught your friends at the top of the mountain. But just before we did, something interesting happened. Would you like to know what it was? Taiho's heart sank. Nara and Jisoo had been captured too, but something in Dr. Yuna's tone suggested there was more to the story. What happened? He asked cautiously. The alien made contact with her ship, Dr. Yuna said. And do you know what her first message was about? Taiho shook his head. It was about you, Mr. Kim, Dr. Yuna said. About humans and their incredible ability to endure pain. The Shadow Dancer entered the Hydra system with extreme caution. Unlike the busy Cygnus or the controlled Orion, Hydra was eerily quiet. Few ships moved between its planets, and those that did were large and heavily armed. This system feels wrong, Hanbin said as they observed the main planet through the ship's view screens. The planet's surface was mostly water, with scattered islands that glowed with artificial light. Sun Ok nodded in agreement. The elevated mind doesn't welcome visitors. They say they've reached a higher state of being and don't need outsiders. Taiho studied the tactical data his implant was gathering. Where would they keep new arrivals like Jisoo? Their main complex is on the largest island, Sunak said. They call it the Ascension Center. That's where they'd take special subjects. For preparation. Preparation for what? Taeho asked. Sun Ok's face grew grim. The elevated mind believes they can transfer consciousness between bodies. They look for people with special mental traits to serve as vessels for their oldest and most enlightened members. Taeho's hands tightened into fists. They want to use my daughter as a vessel, erase who she is? Not just any vessel, Hanbin added. If she can resist telepathic scanning, she would be perfect for their High Elder Junho. He's been seeking a new body for years. Day interrupted their conversation. Creator, I'm detecting extremely advanced scanning technology throughout the system. Our stealth capabilities will not remain effective for long. Taeho thought quickly. Then we won't try to hide. Day, contact their control center. Tell them, we're representatives from Cygnus, bringing special medical supplies for the Ascension Center. Is that wise? Hanbin asked. They'll know something's wrong as soon as they check with Cygnus. They won't be able to check, Sunok said with a small smile. The revolution we started has cut off all regular communication with other systems. Cygnus is in chaos right now. Taeho nodded. Exactly, and we'll use that chaos as our cover. To everyone's surprise, the plan worked. The Shadow Dancer was given permission to land at a small port near the Ascension Center. As they approached, they saw the massive complex, a series of white pyramid-shaped buildings surrounded by beautiful gardens and water features. It looks peaceful, Hanbin remarked. So did the research facility on Orion. Taeho replied darkly. They were met at the landing pad by 3 people wearing flowing white robes. Their faces were calm, their movements graceful, but their eyes seemed oddly empty. Welcome, friends from Cygnus, said the leader, a tall woman with long silver hair. I am caretaker Ra. We were not expecting supplies, but all gifts are welcome in our path to elevation. Taeho bowed slightly. He wore the expensive business clothes from Cygnus, playing the role of corporate representative. The situation in Cygnus has changed. We were sent to ensure your special acquisitions are properly settled. Ra's empty eyes studied him. You speak of the new vessels? Yes, they are being prepared. Would you like to see our facilities? That would be most helpful, Taeho said smoothly. As they followed Ra through the complex, Taeho used his tactical implant to map every corridor, every door, every security measure. The place was beautiful but felt wrong. People walked the halls with the same empty eyes as Ra, all wearing white robes with different colored symbols showing their rank. Our newest vessels are kept in the preparation wing, Ra explained as they walked. They must be cleansed of their old thoughts and memories before they can receive the elevated consciousness of our elders. Taeho's jaw tightened, but he kept his face pleasant. And how long does this cleansing take? It depends on the vessel's resistance. Some take days, some take months. Ra stopped walking and turned to him. The newest one, from Orion via Cygnus, has shown remarkable resistance. Nearly 3 weeks, and still she holds to her old self. Jisoo. She was still fighting them. Pride swelled in Taeho's chest. I would be particularly interested in seeing that one, he said. Mindtech has special interest in her case. Ra shook her head. I'm afraid that's not possible. The High Elder Junho has taken personal charge of her preparation. No one else is permitted access. Before Taeho could respond, a small commotion broke out nearby. A young woman in a white robe had collapsed to the floor. Guards rushed to her, but not to help, to restrain her. No more, I won't forget any more, the woman cried out as they grabbed her arms. My name is Minna. I remember my name. Taeho watched as they dragged the struggling woman away. Ra's face showed no emotion. Some vessels struggle against the inevitable, she said calmly. She will be adjusted again. What happens to their original consciousness? Sunok asked, her voice tight. When the elevated mind takes over. Ra smiled serenely. It joins. The cosmic flow, of course. Their sacrifice brings great honor. They continued the tour, but Taeho had seen enough. This wasn't a spiritual group seeking enlightenment. This was something darker, a cult that stole people's bodies and erased their minds. When they returned to the Shadow Dancer that evening, Taeho called his team together. "We found Jisoo, but we can't get to her directly," he said. "The security around the High Elder is too tight for a frontal approach." "Then what's the plan?" Hanbin asked. Taeho looked at them with determination. "I'm going to do what I did in Orion and Cygnus. I'm going to change the system." Over the next 2 days, Taeho played his role perfectly, the interested corporate representative from Cygnus. He attended their ceremonies, asked questions about their beliefs, and expressed admiration for their achievements. All the while, he was looking for weaknesses in their organization. He found one in Min-ah, the woman who had remembered her name. After bribing a guard, he arranged a secret meeting with her in the medical wing where she was being adjusted. "They can't completely erase you, can they?" Taeho asked her as she sat huddled on her bed. Min-ah looked at him with clear, frightened eyes. "They try. They use drugs and machines to make us forget who we are. But sometimes memories come back. That's when they adjust us again." "How long have you been here?" 3 years, I think. I was brought from Orion. I had abilities they wanted. Do you know a girl named Jisoo? Recently brought here?" Min-ah's eyes widened. "The special one. Yes, everyone knows about her. She fights the cleansing better than anyone they've ever seen. The High Elder visits her chamber every day, but she still resists." Pride filled Taeho's heart again. "That's my daughter." Min-ah stared at him in shock. "You're her father? You came for her?" Tears filled her eyes. "No one ever came for me." "I'm coming for all of you," Taeho promised. "But I need your help. Tell me everything you know about how this place works." What Min-ah told him was disturbing. The elevated mind wasn't just preparing vessels for their elders. They believed they were preparing for the return of ancient beings from the stars, beings who would need perfect hosts. "The High Elder Junho will take your daughter's body first," Min-ah explained. "Then the other elders will take other vessels. They've been waiting for someone like her, someone strong enough to hold an ancient consciousness." Armed with this knowledge, Taeho began the next phase of his plan. Using Day, he started sending messages to the lower-ranked members of the cult, planting seeds of doubt about their leaders. "If the elders truly become elevated," one message asked, "why do they need new young bodies? Wouldn't a truly elevated mind be beyond physical form?" Meanwhile, he had contacted his allies in Orion and Cygnus. The worker rebellion in Orion had succeeded creating a new democratic government. Do-hyun's revolution in Cygnus had overthrown the corporations. Both systems now had fleets, and those fleets were heading to Hydra. On the third day, Taeho requested an audience with High Elder Junho. To everyone's surprise, it was granted. "The final piece is in place," Taeho told Hanbin and Sun Ok as they prepared for the meeting. "Once I'm face to face with Junho, I can implement the last part of my plan." "What if he recognizes who you really are?" Sunoke asked. Taeho checked his neural implant one last time. "Then we do this the hard way." They walked to the High Elder's chamber, escorted by guards. Taeho's heart pounded as he came closer to where Jisoo might be. The doors to the chamber opened, revealing a large room with a single man in elaborate robes sitting on a raised platform. Junho was old, his face lined with wrinkles, but his eyes were sharp and alert, not empty like the others. He studied Taeho carefully. "I know who you are," Junho said in a strong voice. "The father who conquered 2 systems searching for his daughter. The merciful storm, the Earth Liberator." He smiled slightly. "Did you think news wouldn't reach us here?" Taeho didn't flinch. "Then you know why I've come." "For the girl. Your daughter." Junho shook his head. "You're too late. The preparation is nearly complete." "Where is she?" Taeho demanded. Junho gestured to a side door. "See for yourself." The door opened, revealing a smaller chamber. In the center, suspended in some kind of energy field, was Jisoo. Her eyes were closed, her body floating as strange energies pulsed around her. "Jisoo," Taeho called out, but she didn't respond. Junho laughed softly. "She can't hear you. Soon she won't remember you at all." Taeho turned back to the elder, his eyes cold. "You've made 3 mistakes. First, you underestimated a father's love. Second, you underestimated my daughter's strength." He stepped closer to Junho. "And third, nowadays," Taeho said quietly into his communication device. Instantly, every screen and communication panel in the Ascension Center lit up. The faces of ordinary people, workers from Orion, citizens from Cygnus, and even members of the Elevated Mind appeared everywhere, sharing their stories of abuse and exploitation. Junho's eyes widened. "What is this?" "The truth," Taeho said calmly. "I've been broadcasting everything I've seen here to both Orion and Cygnus. Every word you've said, every confession from your victims, every detail of your plans to erase people's minds and use their bodies." Outside, alarms began to sound. Junho stood up, suddenly looking less confident. "You think this matters? My followers are completely loyal. They will not be swayed by— Your followers are already questioning everything." Taeho interrupted. "For the past 3 days I've been planting doubts, revealing your contradictions, showing the lower ranks how the elders live in luxury while they serve." Hanbin stepped forward. "And that's not all. Look outside." Junho walked to a large window and froze. In the sky above the island, dozens of ships had appeared, vessels from Orion and Cygnus now united under the banner of freedom. "Impossible," Junho whispered. "How could you coordinate?" "The same way I coordinated the worker rebellion in Orion and the corporate overthrow in Cygnus," Taeho said, "by showing people the truth and giving them the means to fight back." Sunok's voice came urgently from the doorway. "Taeho, there's fighting in the lower levels. Min-A has freed other captives. They're taking control of the security systems." Junho's face twisted with fury. He pulled a small device from his robes. "If I can't have the girl as my vessel, then no one will have her at all." He pressed a button on the device. The energy field around Jisoo pulsed brighter. She cried out in pain. Taeho didn't hesitate. His tactical implant analyzed the situation in a split second. He leaped forward with inhuman speed, crossing the room, before Junho could react. One precise strike knocked the device from the elder's hand. Another sent Junho crashing to the floor. "Hanbin, the field controls," Taeho shouted as he pinned Junho down. Hanbin rushed to a control panel near Jisoo's chamber. "I don't know how to shut it down." "Allow me," came Dae's voice from Hanbin's communication device. "I can access their systems now." Attempting to safely power down the field, the energy around Jisoo began to fade slowly. Taeho watched anxiously as his daughter's body gently lowered to the floor of the chamber. "Jisoo," he called out, but she remained still, eyes closed. While Hanbin guarded Junho, Taeho ran to his daughter's side. He cradled her head gently. "Jisoo, it's Dad, I'm here, I found you." For a long moment nothing happened. Then slowly Jisoo's eyes fluttered open. They were unfocused at first, then fixed on his face. "Dad?" she whispered, her voice weak. "How did you— Where am I?" Relief flooded through Taeho. He pulled her into a tight hug. "You're safe now. That's all that matters." Jisoo pulled back, slightly looking at him with strange intensity. "There's something wrong with me, Dad. My head— I see things. Know things I shouldn't know." Before Taeho could respond, Junho began to laugh from across the room. "It's too late," the old man said. "The process had already begun. She has glimpsed what's coming. The Ancient Ones are returning and they will need vessels. If not through us, then by some other means." Jisoo stood up shakily, fixing Junho with a stare that seemed older than her years. "You're wrong," she said. "I did see them, but they're not what you think. They're not gods or masters. They're the remnants of those who came before, the original humans who seeded the stars before Earth was even habitable." Junho's face went pale. "No, that's not possible. The ancient texts clearly state— Your texts were misinterpreted," Jisoo continued, her voice growing stronger. They don't want to possess us. They want to guide us, to help us avoid their mistakes. They've been watching, waiting for humanity to spread among the stars again. Sun OK returned with news from outside. The complex is secured. Min-A and the others have taken control. And you should see this. She activated a large screen showing the island from above. All across the Ascension Center, people in white robes were discarding their elders' symbols, helping each other, embracing those who had been captives. The cult's control was broken. What did you do to them? Junho asked in disbelief. I did what I do best, Taeho replied. I showed them a better way. Over the next few days, as ships from Orion and Cygnus helped restore order to Hydra, Taeho learned the full extent of what had happened to Jisoo. The elevated mind had attempted to prepare her as a vessel, but her natural resistance had protected her core self. Instead of being erased, she had somehow connected with the knowledge the cult had been seeking, but not as they understood. It's like having a library in my head, Jisoo explained as they sat in the Shadow Dancer preparing to leave Hydra. Bits and pieces of ancient knowledge, scientific information, star maps from thousands of years ago. Does it hurt? Taeho asked with concern. No, it's just strange. Like remembering things I never experienced. She looked at her father with tears in her eyes. How did you find me? I was taken across 3 star systems. Taeho smiled gently. One step at a time, I just kept going until I reached you, and accidentally sparked revolutions in 3 systems along the way, Hanbin added with a grin. There was a knock on the ship's hatch. When they opened it, they found a group of representatives from all 3 systems standing outside. Earth. Commander, said a worker from Orion. The United Systems request your guidance. Earth Liberator, said a former corporate assistant from Cygnus. We need leadership to build our new alliance. Merciful Storm, said Min-A, now free from the cult's control. Our people look to you for direction. Taeho shook his head. I'm not a commander or a liberator. I'm just a father who wanted his daughter back. But you changed everything, Min-A insisted. 3 systems are free because of you. People everywhere are telling your story. How you conquered without armies, liberated without bloodshed. What will you do? Asked the Orion representative. Will you lead the tripartite alliance? Taeho looked at Jisoo, who smiled encouragingly. Then he turned back to the representatives. I won't be your permanent leader, he said firmly, but I'll help you establish a council with representatives from all worlds, all walks of life. True freedom comes from people governing themselves, not following one person. The representatives seemed satisfied with this answer. As they left, to spread the news, Jisoo turned to her father. Why didn't you ever use lethal force, Dad? I know you could have. Your military record is legendary. Taeho was quiet for a moment, because the true strength of humanity isn't in our capacity for violence. It's in our ability to find another way, to solve problems with our minds rather than our fists, to show compassion even to our enemies. Is that what Mom would have wanted? Jisoo asked softly. Yes, Taeho replied with a sad smile. She always said the best victory is the one where nobody loses. As news of the tripartite alliance spread to other systems, observers from distant alien civilizations took note. One report sent to a faraway world stated, if this is what one human will do for family, imagine what they would do for their entire species. The humans bear watching. A week later, as celebrations marked the formation of the new alliance, Taeho and Jisoo stood on an observation deck, looking at the stars. Ships from all 3 systems floated peacefully in space together. Former enemies, now allies. What now, Dad? Jisoo asked, leaning against her father's shoulder. Taeho smiled and put his arm around her. Now we go home. Your mother would have my hide if we're late for dinner in the afterlife. They both laughed, and for the first time in months, they were simply father and daughter again. Not captives or revolutionaries or conquerors, just family. As the Shadow Dancer turned toward Earth, carrying its precious cargo home, 3 star systems raised their glasses to the Earth Father. who had changed everything by simply refusing to give up on the person he loved most. The end.